We might get started now, everyone. So my name's Catriona and I'm a Technical Officer with Southern Beef Technology Services, and I'll be facilitating tonight's webinar, which is Breed Plan Traits, Fertility, Calving Ease and Other Traits. And Paul Williams, who's a Technical Officer with TBTS, will be presenting tonight's webinar. So before we start, just a few housekeeping things to go through. So if at any time during the presentation tonight your question box disappears, you can click this red arrow to get it back. Paul will be stopping for questions several times throughout the presentation tonight. So if you'd like to ask him a question, click on the questions pane and type your message into the question box here. And if you're having any audio problems tonight, you can call in using your telephone by switching your audio from mic and speakers to telephone in the audio box, and then dial in using the number that's provided. So with that, I'm going to pass over to Paul to begin tonight's presentation.
Thank you, Catriona. Welcome everybody. My name is Paul Williams from TBTS, and I'll be doing tonight's webinar on breed plan traits, fertility, calving, ease and other traits. So today we're on the third in the series of the webinars.
Paul, we can't see your screen at the moment.
Okay. Can you see it now?
No.
Have you got it now?
No. Yes. Yep.
Sorry about that. So tonight's seminar is the third in the series of 5, and the last 2 will be on estimated breeding values in detail and selection indexes in detail. So tonight's webinar, the topics we'll be covering is which fertility, calving ease and other traits are recorded by breed plans, reasons beef producers may wish to consider recording fertility, calving ease and other traits for their animals, and how to record these fertility, calving ease and other traits, and how to submit the fertility, calving ease and other traits performance to breed plan. So the breed plan traits we've seen these the last few weeks. It's just a list of traits that are currently in the breed plan analysis. Today we're just working on the fertility traits. So this is a performance recording timeline. It's just identifying when throughout their lifetime that we need to be recording the traits. So today the 4 current fertility traits and calving ease, we have scrotal size, days to calving, gestation length and calving ease. The first one I'll talk about is scrotal size. So the scrotal size EBV provides an estimated of the genetic difference between an animal's scrotal circumference at 400 days of age. Scrotal size as an EBV is expressed in centimetres, so the larger, more positive scrotal EBV is the more favourable EBV. So a bull for scrotal EBV of +4, you'd expect his sons to have a larger testicles at a yearling age compared to a bull with a scrotal size of -2. So you expect the half that difference between those two sizes on those progeny. So why do we measure scrotal size? The scrotal size is an important indication of genetic merit for several male fertility traits. So a good scrotal size is it's a size of earlier age of puberty, can increase semen production, and also improvement in semen quality. Why? Scrotal size also favourable correlation with female fertility. So bulls with more positive scrotal size EBV are more likely to father daughters that will have early age of puberty, early return to estrus in some breeds, and a shorter days to calving as well. So how do we measure the scrotal size EBVs? Scrotal size EBVs are calculated from a measurement of scrotal circumferences. So the scrotal circumference will only be analysed of the breed plan if the bull is between 300 to 700 days of age when the measure is taken. And it's recommended that you try and do this at a 400-day weight as yearlings to get the best genetic differences, variation between those. As the bulls get older, the scrotal sizes will catch up in size. In breed plans, you recommend producers record scrotal circumference using a metal or the bath tape, as they are not prone to stretching. So to measure the scrotal size, as you can see in these photos, to pull the testes firmly down the lower part of the scrotum, place the measuring tape around the widest point, record the circumference in centimetres to 1 decimal place. So as you can see, the reliable, you push the white button in, and as the tension comes, it'll stop, and you release that white button. Once you get the right tension, it'll stay on that measurement. And that's the one that the Australian cattle vets are recommending we use now. So the important points, the do's: measure scrotal circumference when the bulls are approaching puberty. Typically this is around 400 days of age. Use a consistent measuring technique for all bulls. Now only one person should measure the group of the bulls. So make sure that only one person, you don't swap and change people when you're measuring bulls or measuring those scrotal sizes. It's important to have the consistency when you're doing that. The tension and the tape should be just enough to slightly indentation in the skin of the scrotals. And importantly, things not to do is do not place your thumb or hand of the neck of the scrotum between the cords. This will cause a separation of testes and lead to an inaccurate measurement, as shown in that diagram on the bottom right-hand side. So for data submission for scrotal sizes, you can submit any of the following submission methods. There's a paper form which will be sent out to you, weigh and scan information in the Excel template in the breed plan. On breed plan you will find that and the performance recording software that some of you will have, like Herdmaster and others, and Internet Solution Facility and breed plan websites for participating breed sites, so you can submit it straight in Internet Solutions. Next one I'll move on is to days to calving. So days to calving, EB provides an estimate of the genetic difference between animals, the time from the start of the joining period, so when the females are introduced to the bull until the subsequent calving. So the days to calving EBV is expressed in days, and importantly, the lower, the more negative the days to calving is, the more favourable. So days to calving EB promotes cows that calve early in the season compared to those that are late calver, while penalising cows that do not have a calf. The variation of days to calving is mainly due to the difference in the time it takes for females to conceive after the commencement of joining period. So we can see in that diagram, so we have the bull in mating, we have the conception date, and then the gestation length, so when the calf's born. So we're working back, so we want those cows that are calving closer to when the bull goes into mating, and we'll give you the better days to calving EBV. So why do we measure days to calving? Well, females with the shorter days to calving expect to conceive earlier in the joining period, and these females also tend to be those that have reached puberty earlier as heifers, and they'll return to estrus earlier at calf after calving. And it should be used in conjunction with management strategies, e.g. like culling cows which don't get pregnant, especially those on their first calf. Those cows that do not get pregnant on their first calf tend to be those that'll be the hit-miss cows that will miss that second calf after getting a calf quite often. And it'll certainly help improve the fertility within your herd. So how do we measure days to calving? You need to record all events associated with natural joinings for these females from the start of the mating period, each breeding season, through to the subsequent calving as calves are born. So this includes joining details on all females naturally mated within the herd, the details of all females removed from the herd, especially those present but no longer in the herd at calving. So it's important that you don't just record those cows that have had a calf, you make sure all cows that went into that mating are recorded. In detail, all calves, dead or alive, that are born as a result of these joinings. So it's important that those calves that are born dead are registered, otherwise those cows will not get the opportunity of getting that information in their days to calving. So recording joining details. So record each natural joining event to which a female is exposed. And if they're joined to several bulls in the mating season, all the joinings for those females should be recorded with a new. So every time you put a new sire in, you have to add a new mating record for that joining. So for each joining record, we need the bull that they were joined to, a bull in and a bull out date. So the day the cows went to the bull and the day the bulls came out. And we need in the natural joining, so we need to put an N in the mating for the mating area. And it's very important to record a management group for information to identify cows that were in this group whose fertility may be affected either prior or during the joining program due to non-genetic factors. So if you don't put a management group in when you're submitting that data, those animals will not be included in the analysis. And another thing is very important to record female disposal information. So record the date and the reason any female is removed from the herd, particularly those that are present during joining but are not there at calving. So fate disposal code information is critical for the dose calving analysis, and used to determine whether the female should have a joining record, should be used or not. So you're penalised for being culled or infertile, but not penalised because you're culled for other reasons, like structural performance. So you may have been in mating and you got pregnant, but you didn't get a chance to calve. Those cows will not be penalised. So fate and disposal codes used for dose calving is important that they are different than those disposal codes submitted for routinely for your breed societies for disposal of cows out of your herd. So disposal information submitted to your breed societies will not be calculated in the dose to calving EBV. So recording female disposal, this is a list of codes that are currently available for disposal of cows. And I suppose one of the most important ones there would be failed to get pregnant, not in calf. The F would be the main one for most people would be looking at. There's also poor performance, poor temperament, udder and teat problems. And these are fate codes for animals that are missing or died that you can, cow died calving, may have had diseased, she's missing, presumed dead, and cause unknown, and accidents. So recording the calving details. It's all calves that are born as a result of the joining need to be recorded with your breed society. Not recording all calves, including the dead calves, as I said before, with your breed society will reduce the accuracy of the dose to calving EBVs. And the important points, collecting joining information on all females in the herd, not just those that have calved. Record details of all joining events for which the females are involved, even if you know the joining was unsuccessful. And that's a very important one to make sure you have those animals that didn't get in calf are actually in that group that when you're submitting that data. Accurate recording of fate and disposal codes in all females when they leave the herd. And joining details for females that have been joined in multiple sire groups should also be recorded. In this situation, you need to use a multi-sire ident as the sire ID. So that's just send a list of those sires in that multi-sire group to your breed society, and they'll give you a multi-sire ident for that sire to be used for that as a sire in that mating. And herds that have very wide calving spread all year matings, several may have difficulty collecting joining information. For these ones, you should probably contact BREEDPLAN for any further advice on that. So submitting the data, joining data and fate codes for your female should be submitted directly to BREEDPLAN. Some breeds in the past the breed societies used to submit that. That no longer happens, so you must need to submit this data straight to BREEDPLAN yourself. And you can record the performance recording software extract, or on the BREEDPLAN website, there's information in the Excel templates there for submitting your joining records. Please note, there's no paper forms available for submission of joining information, so you've got to use either of those two. Must be submitted by data electronically. And if you have trouble with that, please contact BREEDPLAN to discuss alternative arrangements. I'll pass it back to Catriona and see if there's any questions.
Thanks, Paul. So we've got a couple of questions so far tonight. So the first one is about scrotal size. And it says scrotal size is only important for the things it indicates about the bull's daughters and sons. How strongly correlated is scrotal size to these characteristics?
It varies from breed to breed, but scrotal size and heifer puberty for Brahmins is around 50, just over 50%. So it's saying that those sons of a sire that have early puberty in males will also have early puberty in females. So it varies from breed to breed. Brahmins is probably the highest, but some of your temperate breeds, it certainly wouldn't be as high as that. Might be around the 20–30%.
Thanks, Paul. We've got a second question. Is there any way to include females that are bred artificially, e.g. by AI, but which are not synchronised, so come back in naturally?
At present, no. The only data that can be used for days to calving is natural mating. I should have said that they also, currently you can submit preg-test data. It's not being analysed, but it may be in the future an opportunity to be able to add the preg-test data, but at present there's no way we can use AI in that at the moment.
Thanks, Paul. And they're the only two questions I've got at the moment. So if no one else has any questions, we might move on because we've got quite a lot of traits to get through tonight.
Next one I'll move on to is gestation length. So gestation length, EBV, is an estimate of the genetic differences between animals in their gestation length. So gestation length can be defined as a period from the date of conception to when the calf is born. And the gestation length is expressed in days, and the shorter the negative the gestation length is, the more favourable EBV. So the shorter gestation associated with generally lighter birth weight, which also improved calving ease, and it gives a chance for better breeding performance amongst the dams. And again, in addition, it also may give the opportunity of the shorter gestation length, giving those calves more time on their mums, and you may have to get bigger weaners from having longer time being born. So how do we measure gestation length? Gestation length is calculated by both joining dates and date of birth records conceived by either AI or hand mating. Consequently, the following details are needed to be recorded. We need a date of birth on each calf, the joining date of any hand mating, and the AI date for AI matings. You don't need to calculate exact gestation length for each calf, but BREEDPLAN analysis will do this for you. So important points. No information from natural matings is used to calculate gestation length. So even observed matings by bulls will not be used and cannot be used. So, and it currently excludes, any of these is currently excluded from BREEDPLAN analysis. A calf that is an embryo transfer is excluded. Calf that is a twin, only one animal represented in the contemporary group, and if there's more than 2 or 3 animals in a small contemporary group that have the same gestation length, it'll also be taken out. So data submission, birth dates and the joining dates and the AI dates should be submitted to your breed society when you submit your calf registrations. So it's important when you're registering that calf that you're submitting these joining dates, this AI date for that as well, which will come in and give you the gestation length EBVs. If you have any queries, so contact your breed society and they'll help you with the submitting of the data. Next one we're going to look at is calving ease. So we have 2 calving ease EBVs. There's calving ease direct and calving ease daughters. So calving ease direct, it estimates the genetic difference of the ability of the sire's calves to be born unassisted from a 2-year-old heifer. So the higher, the more positive the calving ease direct EBV is more favourable. So looking at the example below, so 2-year-old heifers bred to Fred would expect to have less calving problems than the 2-year-olds to bob. So 6% higher, better chance of not having any calving problems from Fred's progeny from the breed average. So Calving-His daughters. So this is an estimated difference, genetic difference in the ability of the size 2-year-old daughters to calve without assistance. So a higher, once again, the higher, the more positive Calving-His EBV is the more favourable. So looking here, an example again that it's saying that Fred's 2-year-old daughters would be would have slightly more calving problems than Bob's would. So why do we measure Calving-His? Well, Calving-His difficulty can have a serious negative impact on your herd and your farm profitability. It can increase cow and calf mortality, can cause slower rebreeding performance in those cows that have taken longer to recover from having the big calves, and additional labour and veterinary expenses. If you've got large calves and you get to call a vet out to pull them out, it certainly adds to your time, and you've got to go and check a lot more cows. Why are we going to measure Calving-His? Well, many genetic and non-genetic influence in Calving-His. So genetic factors include birth weight, calf shape, the pelvic size, and the calf's calving will. So the will of the cow to push that calf out and the will of that will all have an effect. So a Calving-His EBV attempts to take all genetic factors influence calving difficulty into consideration, thus allowing the best possible genetic improvement to be made for this trait. So how do we measure Calving-His? BREEDPLAN calculates Calving-His EBVs from 3 sources of information. Birth weight, which was covered in the webinar last week, gestation length, we talked about that earlier tonight, and a calving difficulty score. So the most important of these 3 pieces of information is this calving difficulty score. So a calving difficulty score is measured visually scoring the cow at birth. The score goes from 1 to 6. So 1's an unassisted, 2's an easy pull, maybe one person just giving a slight easy pull just to pull that calf out. A harder pull's 2 people for mechanical assistance, 4 surgical assistance, veterinary intervention required, and 5 malpresentation, breech birth, and 6 elective surgery. So it's choosing to move that calf before the opportunity that cow has any chance to calving naturally herself. So important points, if you regularly check your cows, and it is reasonable to consider that a cow who has calved without assistance between visits can score a 1, even though you didn't see her calve. It's also important that a lot of breeds societies give you the option of putting in a 1, and if you haven't observed those calves or any of the matings and you shouldn't really be recording that information, you should just leave that blank, because it's only there for those people who are regularly seeing their cows and watching them calve. So you record calving difficulty all the calves, including the dead ones, and if no calving difficulty score is entered, leave it blank or enter a 0, then it is interpreted as not being scored rather than no difficulty. There is no, there's no need for some level of calving difficulties in the herd to be scored. Score to be used effectively in BREEDPLAN. Scoring all births when the Calving-His are 1 or unassisted will not identify any genetic differences in the calving. So birth management groups should be recorded if there are different treatments for the females prior to calving which may affect their calving difficulty. Calf difficulty scores 3 and 4 are grouped together in the BREEDPLAN analysis, and also calving difficulties 5 and 6 are will be excluded from the analysis. They're considered not genetic in their origin, as the cow had a prolapse or you chose to have elective surgery before that cow had the opportunity to calve. So breeders wishing to optimise the accuracy of their Calving-His EBV should also consider recording birth weights and gestation lengths to submitting this data for BREEDPLAN to give you more higher accuracy. So for data submission for the Calving-His, it should be submitted to your breed society along with your birth weight at the time of calf registration. And the ways you can do this is the paper form, Excel template, Calving difficulties can also be submitted to BREEDPLAN using paper form, the Excel template on the BREEDPLAN website, performance recording software extracts, and internet solutions facility for BREEDPLAN website for participating breed societies. It is not necessary to submit the information to both your breed society and to BREEDPLAN. So if you're submitting it to your breed society, you no need to submit that again to BREEDPLAN. I'll take it back to you, Catriona, and see if there's any questions.
No questions yet, Paul.
Okay.
So we can keep going if you like.
Okay. Other BREEDPLAN traits that we currently have, there's 4 other traits currently recorded by BREEDPLAN. There's docility and flight time, temperament measures, structural soundness, and net feed intake. So the first one we'll talk about is temperament. So as I said, there's 2 temperament traits, the docility and the flight time. So why do we record temperament? Recording temperament allows the beef producer to make informed selection decisions around temperament of their herd. So we want to have more docile animals which are easier to handle and less likely to cause injury to themselves and to other animals or people. So why are we going to record? In addition to the beef CRC research, identified that temperament is associated with a number of other traits. Animals of better temperament were found to have improved meat quality, higher weight gain in the feedlot, better feedlot health, and less weight loss over long distance travel and more rapid regaining of weight after transport. Further information, the beef CRC selection for improvement, temperament and benefits and beef production fact sheet. So the first one I'll talk about is docility. So the docility EBV is an estimate of the genetic difference between the animals for temperament. So the docility EBV are expressed in the difference in the percentage of the progeny that will score for an acceptable for temperament. So the higher, the more positive docility EBV is more favourable. So a bull with a docility EBV of +20 you would expect to produce a lot more progeny of acceptable temperament than a bull with a docility EBV of -5. So how do we record docility? So docility EBVs are calculated from docility scores which have been recorded when the animals are between the ages of 60 to 400 days. BREEDPLAN recommends animals are scored for docility at weaning or shortly thereafter. This will minimise the variation in handling between animals. So there are 2 methods which you can score docility. The first one is the yard test and the second is the crush test. So with the yard test, the calf is put into a small square yard and then the handler attempts to hold the calf in the corner for 30 seconds. And with the crush test, the calves are put up the race and individually held in the crush for 30 seconds before they're let out. Before they're let out and observing their temperament as they stand there. So how to record the docility? Docility scoring is from 1 to 5, 1 being docile up to 5 being aggressive. So you can see that a docile animal has a mild disposition, gentle and easy to handle, stands and moves slowly during handling, it's undisturbed, settled. Where restless, quiet but slightly restless, may be stubborn during handling and may try to back out of the crush, pull back at the head gate. A nervous animals, manageable but nervous and impatient, a moderate amount of struggling, movement and tail flicking, repeatedly pushing and pulling on the head gate. Exits the crush bristly. Flighty, animal that's jumping in the crush, quivers, struggles violently, may bellow and froth in the mouth, continually flicking its tail, urinating, and exhibit a long flight distance and exits the crush. And finally, aggressive, similar to a squall, but will add the aggressive behaviour, fearful, extremely agitated, continuous movement, and may include jumping and bellowing, and may exhibit attacking behaviour towards the hand when handled alone. Half scores may be submitted for this as well if the animal exhibits behaviour which is intermediate to the above scores. So the important points about recording docility. BREEDPLAN needs some variation in docility scores for them to be used for effective analysis. So scoring all your calves 1 will not identify genetic differences for docility. So it's important that if you have a bit of variety in your scoring, if it's there, if they're all 1s, well, they're all 1s, but make sure if you're scoring them yourself, make sure you're being honest and scoring them to what they really are and not trying to make them look better than they are. Animals should assign to a different temperament management group if they've been handled different levels of handling prior to the scoring for docility. And the methods of scoring in the yard or the crush should be specific to when submitting the data. So you must submit whether you're a yard or a crush score when you submit that data. And when scoring animals within the herd, it's important that docility score is done by one person and using a consistent scoring method. So it's, once again, like all of our traits, the ones that we're observing, it's important that the one person does all the scoring for these traits. And for data submission, can be submitted directly to BREEDPLAN, can be submitted on paper form, Excel template, performance recording, extracts, software extracts, and an internet solution facility for those at BREEDPLAN website. So docility, I should say, docility is only being scored on the temperate cattle, and flight time is being scored on the tropical cattle. So flight time EBVs are an estimate of genetic difference between an animal and temperament. So flight time EBV is expressed in the difference in the number of seconds it takes for an animal to travel approximately 2 meters after leaving a crush. A higher, more positive flight time EBV is favourable, indicates the longer time it takes to exit the crush, which hence means better temperament. So as we see, so how do we record flight time? So flight time EBVs are calculated from the flight time measurements which have been recorded in the animal using specific flight time equipment. To measure flight time, the animals are held individually in a crush for a short period. The beams are set up just after leaving the crush, and then it measures the time it takes the animal to travel approximately 2 meters between those light beams. So if we look at the 2 light beams, so when it breaks the first light beam, it triggers off starts recording, and when it passes through the second beam is when it'll record the measurement, record the time, and it'll give you that time in seconds. And flight time should be recorded between 80 to 600 days. BREEDPLAN recommends that recorded the animals at weaning or just prior or after weaning, in saying that Santa Gertrudis do their flight times at the 400-day weight. Flight times must be used by a specialised flight time equipment, and anyone who's interested in doing flight time, they just need to contact me at TBTS, and I'll be able to organise a flight time machine for them to go and use. Animals should be assigned to different management groups if they have different level of handling prior to the flight time recording, and they have had different management prior to recording measurements which may affect their flight time. So when recording flight time, it is important to have a consistent method is used, and all cattle are handled by the same person or team, and BREEDPLAN recommends that cattle are run through the crush at least once prior to measuring the flight time to minimise the likelihood of cattle walking when they go out the head bar. Flight time cannot be measured on cattle if cattle are required to turn sharply when they leave the crush. So the crush exit needs to be in a straight ahead or just on a slight angle. And there needs to be also, they must have it going into a large yard and not into a confined space where they can't continue to move out through those beams into the yard. Flight time data submission should be correct. Once again, it should be submitted directly to BREEDPLAN. And performance recording software extracts, again, in an internet solution facilities on BREEDPLAN website for participating breeds to submit that. If you're unable to submit flight time data, please contact staff at BREEDPLAN and discuss the alternative measures of getting that information in. Back to you, Catriona, and see if there's any more questions.
Thanks, Paul. So we've got a couple of questions come in. The first one is, docility is very subjective even with the docility scores. How can this be measured across different producers so the EBVs are accurate?
Well, once again, it's like most traits, they're only being compared against those animals within that management group, but we also have linkage through sires that are going to be used on different properties, which will give us that information that'll compare them across properties. But once again, yeah, we're only being compared to animals in that management group, but we hope we'll have that linkage through sires.
Thanks, Paul. And just to add that we will be covering genetic linkage in next week's webinar in more detail. And we have a second question. So the second question is, are these EBVs regarded as among the most important EBVs relative to the ones we have discussed in the other webinars, so that's the weight and carcass traits, by people in the industry?
That would depend. I certainly would think that for some breeds the temperament EBV has made huge progress in their breeds, but once again it's up to the individual person what is the important EBVs for their breeds, and certainly these ones are important to certain individuals, but as a breed for docility was probably important for some breeds, yes.
Thanks, Paul, and they're the only two questions we had at the moment.
Okay, thank you. So the next one I'll talk about is net feed intake. So BREEDPLAN produces EBVs for two feed efficiency traits. So there's net feed intake post-weaning and net feed intake for feedlot finishing. Pardon me, these EBVs are calculated from information collected from feed efficiency trials. So the first one is net feed intake post-weaning, and it's the estimate the genetic difference between animals in feed intake at a standard weight and rate weight gain when the animals are growing in a growing phase. So the EBV is expressed in kilograms of feed intake per day. So the lower, the more negative than NFI EBV is, the more favourable. So we're looking at a bull with a negative 0.0 kilograms per day, would be expected to produce progeny that eat less feed than the progeny of a bull of plus 0.4, but putting on similar weight gains. And net feed intake for feedlot finishing. So this one estimates genetic difference between the animals in feed intake at the standard weight and the rate of weight gain when the animals are in the feedlot finishing phase. Once again, it's expressed in kilograms for the feed intake per day. And once again, the lower, the more negative the EBV is, the more favourable. So once again, if you're looking at a bull that's negative 0.6 kilograms, you would expect his progeny to eat less per day than the progeny of the bull is plus 0.08, be putting on the same weight gain. The next one we'll talk about is structural soundness. So structural soundness EBV provides 5 important structural traits. So we're looking at front foot angle, the claw set for front feet, rear feet angle, hind leg view, and rear side view. So structural soundness EBVs are reported as an estimate of genetic difference between animals and the percentage of the progeny that will have a desirable score for the particular structural trait. So the higher, the more positive structural soundness EBV, the more favourably indicates a greater percentage of the progeny will have desirable scores for the particular traits. So once again, we look here at the foot angle that Fred and Bob. Fred's very good for foot angle, front feet angle, where Bob's not very good at all. So we also have flags for structural soundness. So animals of a very low or negative structural soundness EBVs are indicated with an additional flag to indicate the nature of the structural fault. So we see for front feet angle and rear feet angle, we'll have ST, which has increased the probability of steep foot angle, and SH increases the probability of shallow feet angle. For front claw set, you have OD, which increases the probability of an open divergent claw, or SC, which increases the probability of a scissors claw. And on the rear hind leg view, BL, pardon me, increases the probability of bow legs in the rear legs, and CH increases the probability of the cow hops in the rear leg set. And the side view, the increased probability of straight rear leg is an SR, and for sickled hock is SI. So how to record structural soundness? So structural soundness EBVs are calculated from the structural scoring information. So BREEDPLAN will only analyse structural scoring information if the animal is younger than 750 days when the structural scores are being recorded. And structural scores must be recorded by a BREEDPLAN accredited structural scorer. And there's a list for the Australian and New Zealand accredited structural scores is available on the BREEDPLAN website, which you can see on the screen in front of you. So recording structural score soundness. So the BREEDPLAN accredited structural scorers use the BEEF class system to assess the animal's soundness using a scale of 1 to 9. So you can see in your front claw set, so 1 has your open, your desirables, pardon me, around the 4, 5, 6, and then the scissor claws out to 9. And for your front rear angles, your steep foot angles are 1, out to your very shallow feet as a 9, and your desirables in the middle around the 5 and 6. So the rear side view, straight leg is 1, and your sickled hock is out with the 9, and your desirable traits are in the 4, 5, 6 again. And, whoops, sorry. And your rear leg view hind, you can see there, so the bow leg is 1, out to your very extreme cow hock at 9, and your desirable animals at the 4, 5, and 6. So important points with structural soundness. While multiple structural scores can be recorded for an individual, only one structural score for each trait will be analysed by a BREEDPLAN. And additional structural scores such can be recorded with BREEDPLAN, although they are currently not being analysed. So these include sheath and navel scores, udder evenness and attachment, and teat and shape and size. So both the structural soundness EBVs and the actual structural scores should be considered when selecting animals within your breeding program. So structural soundness EBV provide the indication of the likelihood of structural difference between progeny, and structural soundness scores on a bull provide the indication of his current soundness. So submitting a data for structural scoring. Structural score paper form provided by the structural scorer. BREEDPLAN structural scoring recording paper forms. The structural scoring information Excel template in the BREEDPLAN website, and performance recording software extracts from your companies. And further, that's the end of the webinar. So for further information, if you'd like the technical officer, Alex McDonald is a technical officer for the Limousin, Simmental and Wagyu. Catriona Millen is a Blondes, Charolais, Devons, Gelby, Hereford, Murray Grey, Red Angus, Red Pole, Solaires, Shorthorn, South Devons and Speckled Park. And myself, I am for the tropical breeds of Belmonts, Brahmins, Brangus, Charbos, Droughtmaster, Santa Gertrudis and Centerpole, and Andrew Byrne is for the Angus breed. And once again, don't forget to register for the rest of the BREEDPLAN Basic Webinar Series. So next week, as I said, the estimated breeding values in detail, Monday the 24th at 8 o'clock again, and the last one on the 31st of August on the selection indices in detail. And to register, go to the website sbts.une.au/webinars, webinars.html. And back to you, Catriona.
No questions yet, Paul. So if no one's got any questions, we might wrap things up. As you exit the webinar, you'll be asked to fill in a poll. So if you could all take probably 5 minutes tops to fill that that survey in, we'd really appreciate it. And yeah, we still don't have any questions, so we might end there. Thanks everyone for coming, and we hope that you found that useful.